Her sister stole her fiancé. 2 years later at a party, they froze when they saw her billionaire husband. The champagne glass slipped from her fingers before she even realized she had let go. It shattered against the marble floor, but no one heard it. Not over the gasps, not over the whispered names, ricocheting through the crowd like bullets. Serena Whitmore stood frozen in the center of her own engagement party, 200 guests watching, as her sister walked through the double doors with one hand pressed to her swollen stomach and the other wrapped around the arm of the man Serena was supposed to marry. Julian would not look at her. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed somewhere above her head, anywhere but her face. But Genevieve looked. Her older sister's gaze found hers across the glittering ballroom, and she smiled. Slow, deliberate, victorious, as if she had been waiting her whole life for this exact moment. "Surprise," Genevieve said, loud enough for the front tables to hear. "We are expecting. And we are in love." The string quartet stopped playing mid-note. Serena's mother, seated near the ice sculpture, touched her collarbone and said nothing. And Serena, 26 years old, dressed in ivory lace, standing beneath a banner that read "Forever Starts Tonight," felt the floor dissolve beneath her feet. She did not scream. She did not cry. She set her remaining composure down on the nearest table like a fragile thing she could no longer carry, lifted the hem of her dress, and walked out of the room barefoot, leaving her heels behind like punctuation at the end of a sentence she never wanted to finish. No one followed her. Stay with me. This story is not about what they took from her. It is about what she became. If you are new here, welcome to Untold Desires by Mr. Lewis. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story will stay with you long after it ends. Now let us go back. 48 hours before everything fell apart. The morning light filtered through sheer curtains as Serena stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the delicate pearl earrings her grandmother had left her. They were small, almost modest, but they carried weight. Her grandmother had worn them on her wedding day. Her mother had refused them, said they were too simple for her tastes. But Serena had asked for them specifically, had kept them in a velvet box for years, waiting for a moment that felt worthy. This was that moment. She tilted her head, watching the pearls catch the light, and smiled at her reflection. Not a wide smile, a quiet one. The kind that comes when you finally believe something good is happening to you. She rehearsed her speech under her breath, the one she planned to give at the party that night. "I want to thank Julian," she whispered to the mirror, "for choosing me, for seeing me when I did not even see myself, for making me believe that love is not something that happens to other people." She laughed softly at herself. Too sentimental, maybe, but it was true. Julian Cross had walked into her life 3 years earlier at a mutual friend's wedding. He was a financial consultant with kind eyes and a habit of remembering small details. Her coffee order, her favorite poem, the name of the stray cat she fed behind her apartment building every morning. He remembered everything, and he made her feel like everything about her was worth remembering. He proposed on a rainy Tuesday, no grand gesture, no elaborate plan. Just the two of them on her tiny balcony, thunder rumbling in the distance, and him pulling a ring from his coat pocket like he had been carrying it for weeks, waiting for a moment that felt right. "Will you marry me?" he had asked, his voice unsteady, rain dripping from his hair. She said yes before he finished the question. That was 8 months ago. And now, standing in her childhood bedroom, pearls in her ears and hope in her chest, Serena Whitmore believed she had finally won something. She believed the universe had finally said yes. She thought wrong. The Whitmore estate had never looked more beautiful than it did that evening. Chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls from the vaulted ceilings, casting prismatic light across the ballroom. White orchids and blush-pink peonies spilled from crystal vases on every table. A string quartet played Debussy in the corner, their notes floating through the perfumed air like whispered promises. 300 guests filled the room, family friends, business associates. College roommates Serena had not spoken to in years, but had invited anyway because her mother insisted on appearances. Everyone who mattered in their social circle had gathered to celebrate the engagement of Serena Whitmore and Julian Cross. Serena moved through the crowd like a woman walking through a dream she was afraid to wake from. Her ivory gown hugged her frame, elegant but understated. She had chosen it specifically because it did not try too hard. She did not want to look like she was performing. She wanted to look like herself. Julian stayed close, his hand finding the small of her back whenever they separated, guiding her back to him like a compass finding north. He introduced her to his colleagues with pride in his voice. He laughed at her jokes even when they were not funny. He looked at her like she was the only person in the room. Or at least, that is what she thought she saw. Around 9 o'clock, the waiters began ushering guests toward their seats for dinner. Serena was speaking with her aunt, a woman who had too many opinions about wedding venues, when she felt Julian's hand on her elbow. "Can I steal you for a moment?" he murmured. She turned, smiling. "Now you are not proposing again, are you?" she teased, tapping the diamond on her finger. He did not laugh. His jaw was tight, his eyes darting toward the terrace doors. Something flickered across his face, something she could not name. "Just for a second," he said. "Please." The terrace was quieter than the ballroom, the noise of the party muffled by heavy glass doors. Candles flickered in wrought iron holders along the stone railing, and the scent of jasmine drifted from the garden below. It should have been romantic. It should have felt like a stolen moment between two people in love. But Julian stood 3 feet away from her, his hands shoved into his pockets, his shoulders hunched like he was bracing for impact. Serena frowned. "What is going on? You are scaring me." He exhaled slowly, the kind of exhale that carries the weight of something about to break. "I did not want to do this tonight," he said. "I swear, Serena. I tried to find the right time, but there is no right time, and I cannot keep pretending." "Pretending what?" He finally looked at her, and in his eyes she saw it. Not love, not the warmth she had grown used to, something else. Guilt, shame, the hollow look of a man who had already made his choice. "I cannot go through with the engagement." The words hit her like a closed fist. She actually stepped back, her heel catching on the stone. "What?" "I have met someone else," he said quickly, like ripping off a bandage. "It was not planned. I did not mean for it to happen. But we have been seeing each other for months, and she is." He stopped, swallowed. "She is pregnant." The world tilted. Serena grabbed the railing to steady herself, her knuckles white against the cold iron. "Pregnant," she repeated. The word felt foreign in her mouth. "Wrong. You are telling me you got someone pregnant." Julian nodded, his eyes dropping to the ground. "Who?" The question came out sharp, desperate, because some part of her already knew. Some part of her had known the moment he asked her to step outside, the moment his hand did not find her back, the moment he stopped looking at her like she mattered. "Julian, who?" He did not answer. "Look at me," she demanded, her voice cracking. "Who is she?" And then the terrace doors opened. Serena turned, and the air left her lungs. Genevieve stood in the doorway, her black velvet dress clinging to the unmistakable curve of her belly. She was glowing. Radiant in a way pregnant women sometimes are, but also something else. Triumphant. She looked like a woman who had won a war no one else knew was being fought. "Hello, little sister," Genevieve said. The words did not register at first. Serena stared at her, at the bump, at the possessive way Genevieve's hand rested on her stomach, and felt her brain short-circuit. Because this could not be real. This could not be happening. Not with her sister. Not with Genevieve. "No," Serena whispered. "No, no, no." Genevieve stepped onto the terrace, her heels clicking against the stone. She did not look sorry. She did not look ashamed. She looked at Julian first, a soft smile curving her lips, and then back at Serena. "I know this is hard," Genevieve said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But we did not plan this. It just happened. And now we have to do what is right for the baby." Serena turned to Julian, her Julian, the man who remembered her coffee order, the man who proposed in the rain. "How long?" she asked. "Serena, how long have you been sleeping with my sister?" He winced like the words physically hurt him. "Since October." October. 4 months. 4 months of lies, of stolen moments, of looking her in the eye and telling her he loved her while climbing into her sister's bed. Serena felt something crack inside her chest, not her heart, something deeper, the foundation she had built her entire sense of self upon. "You let me plan a wedding," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You let me send out invitations. You let me stand in front of 300 people tonight thinking I was going to spend my life with you." "I was going to tell you," Julian said. "I was trying to find the right." "When?" she screamed, the word tearing from her throat. "When, Julian? After the wedding? After I walked down the aisle?" Genevieve stepped between them, her chin lifted, her eyes cold. "This is not helpful," she said. "What is done is done. We need to move forward like adults." Serena stared at her sister, the woman who had taught her how to ride a bike, the woman who had held her hand at their father's funeral, the woman who had smiled and congratulated her when she showed off her engagement ring, who had helped her pick out save the dates, who had asked to be her maid of honor. "You were going to stand next to me," Serena said, her voice hollow. "At my wedding, you were going to stand next to me and watch me marry the man you were sleeping with." Genevieve shrugged. One perfect shoulder rising and falling like this was a minor inconvenience. "I was trying to figure out how to tell you," she said. "It is complicated." Complicated. The word broke something loose in Serena. She laughed. A terrible sound. The laugh of someone watching their life collapse in real time. "No," she said. "Complicated is when you both reach for the last piece of cake. Complicated is when you accidentally wear the same dress to a party. This is betrayal. This is you destroying my life because you could not stand to see me happy." Genevieve's mask slipped for just a second. Something dark flashed in her eyes. Resentment, old and deep and ugly. "Do not flatter yourself," she said quietly. "He chose me. He loves me. I did not have to destroy anything. I just showed him what he really wanted." Serena turned away. She could not look at either of them anymore. The candles flickered in her peripheral vision, the jasmine scent suddenly nauseating. "Go back inside," she said. "Serena," Julian started. "Go. Back. Inside." They hesitated for a moment, exchanging a glance that made Serena's stomach turn, and then they walked past her, back into the ballroom, back to the party. Back to the 300 people who had no idea what had just happened. Serena stood alone on the terrace, gripping the railing, watching the candle flames dance in the breeze. She had 10 seconds, maybe less. 10 seconds before she had to walk back into that room and face everyone. 10 seconds before she had to decide who she was going to be in the aftermath of this. She did not cry, not yet. The tears would come later, in the dark, when no one was watching. Right now she had something more important to do. She had to survive the next hour. The ballroom fell silent the moment Genevieve made her announcement. She did not wait for Serena to return. She did not give her sister the dignity of a private breakdown. Instead, she walked straight to the center of the room, Julian trailing behind her like a dog on a leash, and tapped a champagne glass with a perfectly manicured nail. "Everyone," she said, her voice carrying through the stunned crowd. "I know this is supposed to be Serena's night, but I have some news of my own." She paused. Let the tension build. Let every eye in the room fix on her swollen stomach. "Julian and I are expecting a baby. And we are getting married." Gasps rippled through the crowd like waves. Serena stood in the doorway of the terrace, watching. She saw the expressions shift on the faces of people she had known her whole life. Confusion, horror, pity. Some of them looked at her, then quickly looked away, embarrassed to witness her humiliation. She saw her mother rise slowly from her seat, pearls clutched in one hand, mouth opening and closing like she could not find the right words. And then, instead of rushing to her daughter's side, instead of demanding an explanation, Caroline Whitmore simply sat back down and adjusted her napkin. "No scene," her mother had always said. "We do not make scenes." Serena looked for an ally, anyone. Her college roommate, Lisa, who had flown in from Chicago. Her cousin Mark, who had always said Genevieve was trouble. Her aunt, her uncle, any of the dozens of people who had claimed to love her over the years. No one moved. No one spoke. And in that silence, Serena understood something she had never fully grasped before. She was alone. She had always been alone. The people in this room were not her family. Not really. They were an audience. And they had just watched her become the punchline of her own story. Genevieve was still talking. Something about fate, and following your heart, and how she hoped everyone would support them through this transition. Julian stood beside her, nodding along, occasionally glancing toward the terrace doors where Serena still stood frozen. Their eyes met, and Julian looked away first. That was when Serena moved, slowly, deliberately. She walked into the ballroom, past the whispered conversations and averted gazes, past her mother who would not look at her, past her sister who watched with barely concealed triumph. She stopped at the table where she had set down her heels earlier. She picked them up, and then, holding them in one hand, she walked toward the exit, barefoot, head held high, not running, walking, like a woman leaving a burn-in building she no longer wanted to save. "Serena," Genevieve called out, "do not be dramatic. We can talk about this like adults." Serena did not turn around. She pushed through the heavy oak doors, out into the foyer, down the marble steps, and into the cool night air. The gravel of the driveway bit into her bare feet, but she did not stop. She did not look back. Behind her she could hear footsteps, someone following. "Miss Whitmore?" It was Thomas, the family's driver, hurrying after her with concern on his face. "Miss Whitmore, are you all right? Should I bring the car?" She stopped, turned, saw the genuine worry in his eyes, the first real emotion anyone had shown her all night. "Yes," she said, "my car, now, please." He did not ask questions. Within minutes, her silver sedan was pulling up to the front steps, and Thomas was holding the door open for her, like she was still someone worth treating with dignity. "Where to, miss?" Serena slid into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel. Her hands were shaking, her whole body was shaking. "I do not know," she said. "Away." She pulled out of the driveway before anyone else could follow. In her rearview mirror, she saw the estate shrinking, the golden glow of the windows growing smaller, the life she had built disappearing into the darkness behind her. She drove for 3 hours without stopping. The highway stretched out before her like a promise she did not know how to keep. She passed exits for towns she had never heard of, gas stations glowing lonely in the dark, trucks rumbling past with somewhere important to be. Her phone buzzed constantly, texts, calls, voicemails piling up like accusatory fingers. She did not look at them. She turned the phone off entirely and threw it into the passenger seat like it had burned her. Around 2 in the morning, she pulled into a rest stop off the highway. The parking lot was nearly empty. A single streetlight flickered overhead, casting pale orange shadows across the cracked asphalt. Serena sat in her car, engine idling, and finally let herself feel it. The tears came slowly at first, then faster, then in great heaving sobs that shook her entire body, that left her gasping for air, that felt like they would never stop. She cried for Julian and the future they were supposed to have. She cried for Genevieve and the sister she thought she knew. She cried for herself and the stupid, trusting girl who had believed that love was safe. When the tears finally stopped, she felt hollow, scraped clean, like someone had reached inside her and scooped out everything she used to be. She looked at herself in the rearview mirror, mascara streaked down her cheeks, hair tangled and wild, eyes red and swollen. She did not recognize the woman staring back at her. Good, she thought. I do not want to be her anymore. She started the engine and pulled back onto the highway. By dawn, the road had led her to the coast. She did not remember choosing this direction. Did not remember seeing signs for the ocean. But suddenly, there it was. The horizon breaking open in shades of pink and gold, the water stretching out endless and unknowable, and a small town rising up from the shoreline like something out of a postcard. Anchor Bay, population 4, 200, 1 traffic light, 3 churches. A main street lined with brick buildings that looked like they had been standing since the town was founded. Serena pulled into the parking lot of a diner called the Rusty Anchor. The sign was faded, the neon flickering half-heartedly, but the smell of coffee drifted through her cracked window and made her stomach growl for the first time in hours. She went inside, sat at the counter, ordered coffee and toast from a waitress named Dot who had silver hair and a kind smile and did not ask any questions. The coffee was burnt, the toast was perfect. Serena ate in silence, watching the morning light spread across the water through the diner's salt-stained windows. Fishing boats were heading out, their shapes dark against the brightening sky. Seagulls circled overhead, their cries sharp and hungry. She did not know what she was doing here, did not have a plan, a destination, a reason, but for the first time since the terrace, the tightness in her chest had loosened slightly. Here, no one knew her name. No one knew her sister. No one knew the man who had broken her heart in front of 300 people. Here, she was no one. And somehow, that felt like freedom. "You just passing through, or are you looking for something?" Serena looked up. Dot was refilling her coffee, watching her with eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. "I do not know," Serena admitted. "I do not know what I am doing." Dot nodded like that made perfect sense. "Most people who end up here do not know what they are doing either," she said. "That is why they stay." She set a small card on the counter, a name and phone number written in careful script. "My friend Bet owns a bookshop up the street. She has a room upstairs she rents out sometimes. Nothing fancy, but it is clean and quiet, and she does not ask questions." Serena looked at the card, looked at Dot, looked out the window at the ocean stretching out toward forever. "Thank you," she said. It was the first genuine thing she had said in days. The bookshop was called Pages and Salt, and it looked exactly like somewhere Serena would have walked past in her old life without a second glance. The building was narrow and crooked, wedged between a hardware store and a place that sold handmade candles. The paint was peeling in places, the sign was sun-faded, and the front window was cluttered with stacks of paperbacks arranged in no discernible order. But there was a warmth to it, a sense of invitation, like the building itself was saying, "Come in, stay a while, forget whatever you are running from." Serena pushed open the door, and a small bell chimed overhead. The interior was dim and dusty, lit by mismatched lamps scattered throughout the narrow aisles. Bookshelves lined every wall, stuffed to overflowing with novels and poetry collections and travel guides and recipe books and volumes that looked like they had not been touched in decades. Behind the counter sat a woman in her early 70s, silver hair pulled back in a loose bun, reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, a cup of tea steaming beside her elbow. She looked up as Serena entered, and her eyes sharpened with something that was not quite suspicion, more like assessment, like she was trying to determine if Serena was worth her time. "Can I help you?" "Dot sent me," Serena said. "She mentioned you might have a room to rent." The woman set down her book, a battered copy of Persuasion. She studied Serena for a long moment, taking in the wrinkled dress, the bare feet, the mascara stains still visible on her cheeks. "You running from something or towards something?" she asked. Serena thought about the question, really thought about it. "I do not know yet." The woman nodded slowly. "Honest answer. I am Bet. Come on, I will show you the room." The room above the bookshop was small but clean. A single bed with a brass frame, a wooden dresser with a cracked mirror, a window that overlooked the harbor, the fishing boats bobbing gently in their slips. It was nothing like the apartment Serena had left behind, nothing like the curated spaces she had filled with expensive furniture and carefully chosen art. It was bare, simple, anonymous. It was perfect. "Rent is $400 a month," Bet said from the doorway. "That includes utilities, but not food. There is a hot plate in the corner if you want to cook, but most people end up eating at the diner." "I will take it." Bet raised an eyebrow. "You do not want to think about it?" "No." She nodded like that was the right answer. "You can move in today if you want. I will need first month up front." Serena realized suddenly that she had nothing. No bags, no clothes, nothing but her car and her phone and the dress she had worn to her own engagement party. "I need to go back to my car," she said. "Get my purse." "Take your time," Betty said. "I will be downstairs." Serena did not go back to the city. She did not call anyone. She did not try to retrieve her belongings or explain her disappearance, or make peace with the people who had watched her world collapse without lifting a finger. Instead, she drove to the nearest department store and bought the basics: jeans, t-shirts, a warm sweater, toiletries. A journal with a plain leather cover and a set of pencils, because some part of her remembered that she used to draw, used to find peace in the scratch of graphite against paper. She paid in cash. She did not look at her phone. When she returned to the bookshop, Bet was waiting with a key and a cup of tea. The floorboards creak, Bet warned her, and the hot water takes forever to warm up. But it is quiet, and people here do not ask questions they do not want answered. "Why are you helping me?" Serena asked. Bet shrugged. "Because 30 years ago, a stranger helped me when I showed up in this town looking just as lost as you do." She handed Serena the key. "Get some sleep. You look like you need it." That night, Serena lay in her narrow bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of her new life, the creak of the old building settling, the distant cry of gulls, the murmur of the ocean, constant and unchanging. She thought about Julian, about the way he had looked at her on the terrace, guilty and small and already gone. She thought about Genevieve, about the triumph in her sister's eyes, the smile that said, "I win." She thought about her mother, sitting silently in her chair, choosing appearances over her own daughter. And then she stopped thinking about them. She closed her eyes and listened to the ocean. And for the first time in days, she slept. The first month in Anchor Bay passed in a blur of small adjustments and quiet survival. Serena learned the rhythms of the town like a language she had forgotten she once spoke. The diner opened at 6 and closed at 9. The fish market got fresh catches on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. The bookshop was busiest on weekends when tourists drifted through, and silent as a church on weekday afternoons. She started helping Bet around the shop. Shelving returns, organizing displays, recommending novels to customers who wandered in, looking for something to read on the beach. "You have good taste," Bet told her one afternoon, "or at least you know how to pretend you do." "Is there a difference?" Serena asked. Bet smiled. "Not in this business." The work was simple, repetitive, exactly what Serena needed. It gave her something to do with her hands, something to focus on, besides the constant loop of memories playing in her head. She did not tell Bet about her old life, did not explain where she came from, or why she had arrived barefoot and broken in the middle of the night. Bet did not ask. That was the unspoken agreement between them. You could be anyone you wanted in Anchor Bay, as long as you did not expect anyone to pretend with you. By her 6th week, Serena had fallen into something resembling a routine. She woke before dawn and walked to the beach, sat on the cold sand and watched the sun rise over the water. The colors changed every morning, sometimes pink, sometimes gold, sometimes a pale gray that matched the fog rolling in off the harbor. She started sketching again, small things at first, seashells, boats, the way the light hit the water at certain angles. Then bigger things, the outline of a woman walking into the ocean, a house with empty windows, 2 sisters standing back to back, unable to face each other. She did not show anyone. The drawings were hers. The first things she had created in years that were not meant to impress or perform or prove anything. One morning she drew Julian's face from memory. Every detail she could recall, the kind eyes, the crooked smile, the way his hair fell across his forehead. When she finished, she looked at it for a long time. Then she tore it into pieces and let the wind carry them out to sea. It was a Thursday afternoon in early April when she first saw him. Serena was arranging a display of new arrivals in the shop window when she noticed a man sitting on the bench across the street. He wore a plain gray t-shirt and faded jeans. His shoes were caked with sand. He was reading a paperback, a battered copy of something she could not make out from this distance. He looked up, as if sensing her gaze, and their eyes met through the glass. Serena looked away quickly, pretended to adjust a book spine. When she glanced back, he was reading again, as if the moment had not happened. But she noticed him, the stillness of him, the way he sat like someone with nowhere to be and nothing to prove. She noticed him again the next day. Same bench, different book, and the day after that. On the 4th day, she finally walked outside during her lunch break and sat on the far end of the bench. Not too close, not too far, just close enough to seem accidental. He looked up from his book. East of Eden, she saw now. The cover was water-damaged and well-loved. "Good book," she said. He smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. "One of the best. You have read it?" Twice. She looked out at the harbor. The second time was better. They always are, he said. You notice things you missed the first time around. He did not ask her name. She did not ask his. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the boats drift in and out of the harbor, and then he returned to his reading and she returned to the shop. But something had shifted. Some small crack had formed in the wall she had built around herself. And for the first time in months, she was curious about someone other than herself. His name was Adrian. She learned this a week later. When he finally came into the bookshop, he bought 3 novels, paid in cash, did not ask for a bag. I am Adrian, he said at the register, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Serena, she replied. Pretty name. Thanks. My mother hated it. He laughed, a real laugh, surprised and warm, and she felt something flutter in her chest. Not attraction, not yet, something smaller. The first green shoot pushing up through scorched earth. He started coming by regularly after that, sometimes to buy books, sometimes just to sit on the bench and read, sometimes to walk with her to the diner for coffee when her shift ended. They talked about nothing important, books they loved, movies they had seen too many times. The way the fog rolled in on certain mornings like the ocean was trying to swallow the town. He never asked where she came from. She never asked what he did for a living. They existed in the present tense, 2 people suspended in the same amber light, and for now, that was enough. One evening they sat on the pier, legs dangling over the water, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Why did you come here? She asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I needed to be somewhere no one expected me to be. Running from something? Escaping, he corrected. There is a difference. She nodded. She knew the difference intimately. What about you? He asked. She looked at him, at his easy posture, his patient eyes, the way he listened like he actually wanted to hear the answer. Same, she said, escaping. He did not push, did not ask what she was escaping from, or why. He just nodded, like that made perfect sense, and went back to watching the sunset. And in that moment, Serena realized something that terrified her. She was starting to trust him. She was starting to feel again. And she had absolutely no idea if that was a good thing or the worst mistake of her life. But that, dear friends, is where we must pause. Serena has found a new life in Anchor Bay, a new rhythm, a new connection with a stranger who asks nothing from her but her presence. But secrets have a way of surfacing, and the past has a way of catching up with people who think they have outrun it. What happens when Serena discovers that Adrian is not who he says he is? What happens when the family she left behind comes looking for her? And what happens when she finally has to decide whether to stay hidden or step back into the light? The truth has a way of arriving when you least expect it. Serena had spent 3 months building something fragile and new in Anchor Bay, a quiet life, a tentative friendship, the first stirrings of something she was afraid to name. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, it all came crashing down. She was walking through the grocery store, basket in hand, reaching for a bag of oranges when she saw his face. Not in person, on a magazine cover. Forbes. The glossy cover showed a man in a tailored suit, standing in front of a wall of glass windows overlooking a city skyline. His jaw was clean-shaven. His hair was neatly styled. His expression was serious, commanding, nothing like the easy smile she had grown used to. But it was him, Adrian. The headline read, Adrian Voss, the reclusive billionaire redefining clean energy. Serena stood frozen in the produce aisle, the oranges forgotten, her heart slamming against her ribs. She picked up the magazine with trembling hands and stared at the photo. Adrian Voss, founder and CEO of Voss Energy Solutions, net worth estimated at $4.2 billion. Known for his reclusiveness and his refusal to engage with the press. The man who sat on a bench reading paperbacks. The man who paid for coffee and crumpled bills. The man who wore sand-caked shoes and faded t-shirts and never once mentioned what he did for a living. A billionaire. She bought the magazine. She did not remember driving back to the bookshop. She did not remember climbing the stairs to her room or sitting down on her narrow bed with the pages spread across her lap. She read the article 3 times. Adrian Voss had built his fortune in renewable energy, revolutionizing solar technology in ways that had made him one of the most influential figures in the industry. He was known for disappearing for months at a time, leaving his board of directors to manage operations while he vanished to undisclosed locations. Recharging, his spokesperson called it. Mr. Voss believes that true innovation requires disconnection. Disconnection. Is that what she was? A disconnection? A vacation from his real life? The anger came slowly at first, then faster, then all at once. She grabbed her jacket and walked out into the evening air. She found him on the pier. He was sitting where they always sat, legs dangling over the water, a book open in his lap. He looked up when he heard her footsteps, and his smile started to form before he saw her face. The smile died instantly. "Serena," he said, standing. "What is wrong?" She threw the magazine at his feet. He looked down at it, at his own face staring back at him from the glossy cover. And she watched something shift in his expression. Not surprise, not shock, just resignation. The look of a man who had been waiting for this moment and dreading it in equal measure. "I can explain," he said quietly. "Explain what? That you lied to me? That you let me believe you were just some guy who liked books and long walks on the beach?" "I did not lie. I just did not tell you everything." "That is the same thing, Adrian." She stepped back, putting distance between them. "Or should I call you Mr. Voss?" He flinched at the name. "Please," he said, "just let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you are worth $4 billion, but you have been slumming it in this tiny town, pretending to be normal. What is this for you? Some kind of social experiment? Poor little rich boy wants to see how the other half lives? It is not like that. Then what is it like?" He exhaled slowly, ran a hand through his hair. For a moment, he looked exhausted, older than his years. "Do you know what it is like," he said finally, "to never know if anyone actually sees you? To wonder if every person who smiles at you is calculating what they can get? To have people tell you what you want to hear because they are afraid of what happens if they tell you the truth?" Serena folded her arms. "That sounds like a very expensive problem." "It is still a problem." He looked at her, and there was something raw in his eyes, something vulnerable. "I came here because I needed to remember what it felt like to be a person. Not a brand, not a bank account, just a man who could sit on a bench and read a book without someone trying to sell me something, or ask me for something, or use me for something." "So you hid." "I escaped. There is a difference. You said so yourself." The words hit her like a slap. Her own logic turned back on her. "Do not do that," she said. "Do not use my words against me. I am not trying to. I am trying to make you understand." He stepped closer, but stopped when she stepped back. "Serena, every person I have met in the last 10 years has wanted something from me. Money, access, power, connections, every single one, and then I met you." She waited. "You never asked what I did for a living. You never Googled me. You never tried to impress me or flatter me or angle for anything. You just sat with me, talked to me, saw me. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Serena felt the anger wavering. She hated that it was wavering. She wanted to hold on to it, to let it protect her from whatever this was. "I came here because someone I loved used me," she said, her voice cracking. "Betrayed me in front of everyone I knew, made me feel like I was nothing, like I did not matter. I know. You do not know. You cannot possibly know what it is like to stand in a room full of people who are supposed to love you and realize that not a single one of them will choose you." Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You are right. I do not know exactly what that feels like. But I know what it is like to be surrounded by people and feel completely alone. I know what it is like to wonder if anyone would care about you if you did not have something they wanted." Serena blinked. The tears she had been fighting finally spilled over. "I trusted you," she whispered. "I was starting to trust you, and now I find out you are not even who you said you were. I am exactly who I said I was." Adrian stepped closer again, and this time she did not step back. "I just did not tell you about the money. And I should have. I know I should have. But I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" that you would look at me differently, that you would stop seeing me and start seeing the number. He reached out, hesitated, then gently took her hand. Serena, I am not asking you to forgive me. I am asking you to believe me when I say that everything between us has been real. Every conversation, every walk, every moment, that was me, the real me, the me I have not been able to be in years. She looked down at their hands. His fingers wrapped around hers, warm, steady, familiar. I do not know if I can trust you, she said. Then let me earn it. He squeezed her hand gently. Let me prove that not everyone will hurt you. Let me be the exception. The wind picked up, carrying the salt smell of the ocean. Somewhere in the distance, a seagull cried. Serena pulled her hand away slowly, not in anger, just in caution. I need time, she said. I need to think. He nodded. His eyes were wet, but he did not try to hide it. I will wait, he said. However long it takes, I will be here. She turned and walked back toward the town, the magazine still lying on the pier behind her. She did not look back. But she did not say goodbye either. 3 weeks passed. Serena threw herself into work at the bookshop, filling her days with tasks that required her hands but not her heart. She organized the storage room, alphabetized sections that had been chaos for years, built a display for local authors that Bet said was the nicest thing anyone had done for the shop since she opened it. She did not go to the pier. She did not look for Adrian on the bench across the street, but she thought about him constantly. At night, she would lie in her narrow bed and replay their conversations in her head, the way he listened, the way he remembered small details, the way he made her feel seen in a world that had spent so long looking past her. She thought about Julian, about the way he had made her feel seen, too, right up until the moment he did not. Was Adrian any different, or was she just making the same mistake with a larger bank account? On the 18th day, she found a note slipped under her door. I meant what I said, every word. Adrian. She read it 14 times before she finally made a decision. His rental cottage sat at the north end of the beach, a small weathered structure with blue shutters and a wraparound porch that overlooked the water. Serena walked up the sandy path, her heart pounding, her hands shoved in her pockets to keep them from shaking. She knocked. The door opened, and Adrian stood there in a wrinkled t-shirt and sweatpants. His hair was uncombed. His eyes had shadows under them that had not been there 3 weeks ago. He looked at her like she was a miracle. Hi, she said. Hi. They stood in the doorway for a long moment, the ocean roaring behind them, the wind pulling at their clothes. I am still angry, she said finally. I know, and I do not know if I can ever fully trust you. I know that too. She took a breath. But I believe you, she said. I believe that what we had was real, and I believe that you were afraid. Because I was afraid too. His expression cracked. The careful control he had been maintaining slipped away, and underneath it was just a man, tired, hopeful, terrified. Serena, he started. I am not finished. She held up a hand. If we are going to do this, whatever this is, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. No more hiding. If there is something I need to know, you tell me. Even if you think it will hurt. Even if you think I will run. Because I have already been blindsided once, and I will not survive it again. He nodded slowly. I promise, he said. No more secrets. Not from you. Not ever. She studied his face for a long moment, looking for the lie, looking for the crack in his armor that would tell her this was all an act. She did not find one. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. Okay, I believe you. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Okay, I am willing to try. He kissed her then. Not desperately, not hungrily, gently, like she was something precious that might disappear if he moved too fast. She did not disappear. She kissed him back. And somewhere deep inside her, a door that had been locked for a very long time began to open. The next 6 months were the happiest of Serena's life. She and Adrian built something together in Anchor Bay, something quiet, something real, something that had nothing to do with money or status or the expectations of a world that had never understood either of them. They walked the beach every morning, cooked dinner together in his tiny kitchen, read books side by side on his porch, their feet tangled together on the railing. He showed her his work, not the boardrooms and the press conferences, but the actual technology. The solar panels he had designed himself, the prototypes he tinkered with in a workshop behind the cottage, the dreams he had for a world powered by something cleaner than greed. She showed him her art, the sketches she had been hiding in her room, the paintings she had started working on, dark and light and everything in between. He looked at them for a long time, his expression unreadable. "These are incredible," he said finally. She shook her head. "They are just therapy." "No," he turned to face her. "These are real. These are you. And they deserve to be seen." She did not know how to respond to that. No one had ever looked at her work and seen something worth sharing. So she just kissed him and changed the subject. But later that night she looked at the paintings again, and for the first time she wondered if maybe he was right. They got married on a Tuesday. No guests, no announcements, no fanfare. Just a courthouse in a neighboring town, a borrowed dress from a vintage shop, and vows they had written on napkins the night before. Serena stood across from Adrian in the cramped office of a justice of the peace, her hands trembling as she read the words she had struggled to find. "I spent my whole life waiting for permission to exist," she said, "waiting for someone to tell me I was enough, waiting for someone to choose me, and then I met you. And you did not choose me like I was a prize to be won. You chose me like I was a person worth knowing. You made me realize that the only permission I ever needed was my own." Adrian's eyes were wet when she finished. He had to clear his throat twice before he could speak. "I have spent 10 years building an empire," he said. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have everything the world says I should want. But none of it meant anything until I found you. You are the only real thing I have ever known. And I swear to spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget how extraordinary you are." The justice of the peace smiled and pronounced them married. They kissed, and Serena Whitmore became Serena Voss. They honeymooned in Anchor Bay itself because there was nowhere else either of them wanted to be. Long walks, tangled sheets, coffee on the porch at sunrise. He hung her paintings on every wall of the cottage. She pretended to be embarrassed, but secretly she loved it, loved seeing her work displayed like it mattered. Loved the way he looked at each piece like it was a window into her soul. For the first time in her life, Serena felt like she was living a story she had written herself. And then the invitation arrived. It came on a cold February afternoon, forwarded through 3 addresses before it finally reached her at the bookshop. Cream-colored envelope, embossed lettering, her mother's handwriting on the back. "Please come." Inside was an invitation to Genevieve's 30th birthday celebration. Black tie, the Whitmore estate. Serena stared at it for a long time. 2 years. It had been 2 years since she walked out of that ballroom barefoot and broken. 2 years since anyone from her old life had seen her face or heard her voice. And now they wanted her back. "You do not have to go," Adrian said that night, watching her turn the envelope over and over in her hands. "I know. If you want, we can throw it away. Pretend it never came." She shook her head slowly. "No, I think I need to do this." "Why?" She looked up at him. "Because I have been hiding. Healing, yes, but also hiding. And I am done letting them be the reason I stay small. I am done giving them power over my life." Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Then we go together," he said. "Whatever happens, I will be right beside you." She reached for his hand. "Thank you." He squeezed her fingers. "Always." The Whitmore estate looked exactly as Serena remembered. White columns rising against the evening sky, manicured gardens stretching toward the horizon. Windows glowing with golden light like something out of a fairy tale. But she knew better now. She knew the darkness that lurked behind the beautiful facade, the cruelty hiding beneath the polished surface. She stepped out of the car in a dress the color of deep burgundy, her grandmother's pearls around her neck. Her hair was swept back, elegant but effortless. She had spent 2 years learning how to carry herself without apology. Tonight it showed. Adrian walked beside her in a tailored black suit. He looked comfortable in it, but also slightly amused, like he was playing a role he had played many times before and no longer believed in. The valet took their keys. His eyes widened slightly when he recognized the car. A Bentley, Adrian had insisted. "If we are going to make an entrance," he had said, "we might as well commit." Word traveled fast. By the time they reached the ballroom doors, Serena could already hear the whispers rippling through the crowd beyond. She stopped, took a breath, felt Adrian's hand settle on the small of her back. "Ready?" he asked, quietly. "No," she said, "but I am doing it anyway." The doors opened. The ballroom fell silent. It was exactly like the first time. The chandeliers, the string quartet, the hundreds of faces turning in unison, their expressions shifting from curiosity to shock to something that looked almost like fear. But this time, Serena was not the victim. This time, she was something else entirely. Genevieve stood near the grand fireplace, surrounded by a cluster of admirers, a champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. She was wearing a designer gown that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was flawless. But her face went white the moment she saw Serena. And then her eyes moved to Adrian, and the recognition hit her like a physical blow. Serena walked toward her sister slowly, not rushing, not hesitating, just walking, like a woman with nothing to prove and nothing to fear. "Hello, Genevieve." Genevieve's mouth opened and closed. For a moment she looked like she had forgotten how to speak. "Serena, you came. I did not think you would. You invited me." "I?" Genevieve glanced around, clearly searching for an escape route. "I did not know if the invitation would reach you. No one knew where you were. And yet here I am." The crowd around them had gone utterly still. Every eye in the room was fixed on the two sisters, watching this confrontation unfold like a scene from a movie. Serena let the moment stretch, let her sister squirm. Then she said, "This is my husband, Adrian Voss." The name detonated like a bomb. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone actually dropped their champagne glass. A woman near the back of the room pulled out her phone and started typing frantically. Genevieve's face went from white to gray. Your husband?" Serena smiled. Not a warm smile, not a cruel smile. Just the smile of a woman who had finally found her footing. "We got married 6 months ago. Small ceremony, very intimate. You would not have been invited anyway." Genevieve flinched like she had been slapped. Good, Serena thought. Let her feel an ounce of what I felt. Adrian stepped forward, extending his hand with perfect politeness. "It is a pleasure to meet you," he said. "Serena has told me so much about you." Genevieve looked at his hand like it was a snake about to bite her, but she shook it anyway, because what else could she do with half of high society watching? "The pleasure is mine," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian smiled, the smile of a man who had dealt with people like Genevieve 1,000 times before and found them all equally tedious. "Lovely party," he said. "You have excellent taste." Then he turned away, dismissing her entirely, and guided Serena toward the bar. Behind them, the whispers erupted like wildfire. Serena did not look back. Dinner was served an hour later. Serena found herself seated at a table near the back, far from the head table where Genevieve held court, a deliberate slight, no doubt. A way to remind her that she was no longer part of the inner circle. She did not mind. She had Adrian beside her, and that was more than enough. The meal passed in a blur of forced small talk and awkward silences. The other guests at their table clearly did not know what to make of them. The mysterious sister who had vanished, the billionaire husband who had appeared from nowhere. Serena caught fragments of conversation from nearby tables. "Is that really Adrian Voss? I heard he never goes to these things. They said she ran away after the incident. You know, with the sister and the fiancé. $4 billion. Can you imagine?" She let them talk, let them speculate, let them weave whatever narrative they wanted. Because she knew the truth, and the truth was better than any story they could invent. After dinner, she excused herself and stepped onto the terrace for some air. The same terrace where Julian had ended their engagement. the same terrace where her world had shattered into pieces. She stood at the railing and looked out at the garden below. The jasmine was blooming again. The candles flickered in their holders. Everything was exactly the same. And everything was completely different. She heard footsteps behind her. She did not turn around. "I knew you would come out here eventually," Genevieve said. Serena took a slow breath. "What do you want, Genevieve?" Her sister moved to stand beside her at the railing, close but not too close, like she was afraid to breach some invisible boundary. "I want to apologize." Serena finally turned to look at her. Genevieve looked smaller than she remembered. The confidence that had always radiated from her like a force field seemed diminished somehow. Dimmed. There were shadows under her eyes that makeup could not quite hide. "I know it is too late," Genevieve continued. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I am sorry for everything." Serena studied her sister's face, looking for the lie, looking for the calculation. She found something else instead, something she had never seen in Genevieve before. Exhaustion, and underneath it, genuine regret. "Julian left," Genevieve said quietly. 8 months after the baby was born. He said I was not who he thought I was. She laughed bitterly. Funny, is it not? The man who lied with me could not stand being lied to. Serena said nothing. "I have been alone for over a year now," Genevieve continued, "raising a daughter by myself, watching our mother grow more distant every day, wondering if I will ever stop being the villain of my own story." She turned to face Serena fully. "I do not expect you to feel sorry for me," she said. "I do not deserve sympathy. I just needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting it." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of jasmine through the night air. Serena looked at her sister, this woman she had grown up with, this woman she had idolized and resented and loved and hated in equal measure. "Why did you do it?" she asked, the question she had never been able to ask. The question that had haunted her for 2 years. "Why did you hate me that much?" Genevieve's eyes filled with tears. "I did not hate you," she whispered. "I envied you. I have always envied you." "Envied me? For what?" Genevieve shook her head slowly. "You were always so bright," she said. "People loved you without you even trying. You walked into a room and everyone noticed. Not because you demanded attention, but because you had this light, this warmth, and I had to fight for every scrap of recognition I ever got." She wiped at her cheeks with the back of her hand. "When you introduced Julian, when I saw the way he looked at you, I could not stand it. I could not stand watching you have something else I wanted. So I took it, because that is what I do. That is who I have always been." Serena felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something else. Understanding, maybe, or at least the beginning of it. "You did not just take Julian," she said quietly. "You took my dignity, my sense of self, my belief that anyone could ever love me honestly." "I know. You humiliated me in front of everyone we know." "I know. And you smiled while you did it." Genevieve nodded, more tears falling now, making tracks through her perfect makeup. "I know," she said again, "and I will never forgive myself for it. Even if you somehow find a way to forgive me." The silence stretched between them. The string quartet had started playing again inside, a waltz, slow and elegant. "I forgive you," Serena said finally. Genevieve looked up, startled. "But forgiveness is not reconciliation," Serena continued. "It is not birthday cards and brunch invitations and pretending nothing happened. It is me letting go of the weight I have been carrying, that is all. I understand. I hope you find peace, Genevieve. I hope you raise that little girl to be kinder than we were taught to be. But I do not want you in my life." Genevieve's face crumpled, the last of her composure finally breaking. "I understand," she said again, her voice barely audible. "I understand." Serena reached out and touched her sister's arm, just for a moment, just long enough to acknowledge that they had once been something other than this. Then she turned and walked back inside. She found her mother near the bar. Caroline Whitmore looked older than Serena remembered, the lines around her eyes deeper, the set of her shoulders less certain. She was holding a glass of white wine like a lifeline, watching the crowd with an expression that was hard to read. Serena walked up beside her. "Mother." Caroline turned. Her face went through a series of emotions. Surprise, guilt, something that might have been relief. "Serena." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You came. Genevieve already said that." Caroline's grip on her wineglass tightened. "I did not think you would. After everything. After you sat silently and watched my sister destroy my life? After you mouthed no scene instead of defending your own daughter?" Caroline flinched. "You are right," she said. "You are right to hate me." "I do not hate you," Serena said. "Hating you would require me to still care what you think. And I stopped caring a long time ago." The words landed like blows. Caroline's face crumpled slightly. "I failed you," she whispered. "I know that. I cared more about appearances than about protecting my daughter, and I have regretted it every single day since you left." Serena studied her mother's face, looking for the performance, looking for the calculation. But all she saw was a woman who had finally run out of masks to hide behind. "I am not asking for forgiveness," Caroline continued. "I know I do not deserve it. But I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that losing you has been the worst punishment I could have received." Serena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I forgive you too." Caroline looked up, her eyes wet. "But like I told Genevieve, forgiveness is not an invitation back into my life. I am not doing the polite version of family anymore. I am not pretending that everything is fine for the sake of appearances." She stepped back. "I hope you find peace, Mother. I hope you learn how to love without conditions. But I do not want to be your daughter anymore." Caroline's face broke. Really broke. The carefully constructed facade finally crumbling completely. "Serena," she said, "please." But Serena was already walking away. Adrian met her at the door. "Ready?" he asked. She took his hand. More than ready. They walked out of the ballroom together, through the marble foyer, down the grand steps, and into the cool night air. Behind them, the party continued. The string quartet played. The champagne flowed. But Serena did not look back. Not once. The airport was quiet at sunrise. Golden light filtered through the massive windows as Serena sat in a leather chair, her boarding pass tucked inside her passport, watching planes drift across the tarmac like giant silver birds. She had not slept, had not wanted to. The events of the night before were still too fresh, too raw to process. But she did not feel tired. She felt clean. Adrian sat beside her, his hand resting on her knee, his eyes half closed. He had stayed up with her all night, talking, listening, holding her, while she cried out the last of the grief she had been carrying. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. She thought about it, really thought about it. "Light," she said, "like I finally put down something I did not even realize I was still carrying." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "You did not just survive them," he murmured. "You outgrew them." She leaned her head against his shoulder and closed her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For being there. For not trying to fix it or solve it or make it better. Just for being there." He wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close. "Always," he said. "That is what I promised." Their flight was called 30 minutes later. They boarded the plane hand in hand, found their seats, and watched through the window as the city that had broken her grew smaller and smaller below them. Serena did not feel sad. She felt free. 6 months later, she opened a gallery. It was a small space, tucked between the bookshop and the candle store on Main Street in Anchor Bay. Nothing fancy, nothing pretentious. Just white walls and good lighting and paintings that told stories no one else knew how to tell. She called it After the Storm. The walls were filled with her work, the ocean in all its moods, women walking into the water, their dresses trailing behind them like ghosts, houses with windows that looked like eyes, sisters standing back to back, forever unable to face each other, dark work, light work, everything in between. Bet came to the opening. She stood in front of a painting of a boat on stormy waters and nodded slowly. "You have got something," she said. "I always knew you did." Serena smiled. "You gave me a place to find it. I gave you a room with bad plumbing, you did the rest. Adrian hung every painting himself. He built the frames by hand in his workshop. He stood beside her at the opening, watching strangers look at her work with something approaching awe, and she saw the pride in his eyes. They are finally seeing what I have always seen, he said. She kissed him in front of everyone. She did not care who was watching. Reporters came eventually. Word had gotten out about Adrian Voss's mysterious wife, about the woman who had vanished from society after a very public scandal and reappeared married to a billionaire. They wanted the story, the drama, the revenge narrative they could package and sell. Serena gave them nothing. She refused every interview request, declined every magazine offer, never once mentioned her sister, or her mother, or the night that had shattered her life. When a reporter cornered her outside the gallery and demanded to know how it felt to go from humiliated to billionaire's wife, she looked him directly in the eye and said, I do not define myself by my bank account or my husband's name. I define myself by what I create. If you want a story, go write fiction. The reporter left empty-handed. The story died within a week. She started a scholarship fund. Named it after her father, the only person in her family who had ever seen her without competition. It provided art supplies and tuition assistance to young artists from difficult backgrounds, kids who had been told they were too much or not enough, kids who needed someone to believe in them. The first recipient was a 17-year-old girl from a town 3 hours away. She had been living in foster care since she was 12 and had taught herself to paint using supplies she stole from school. Her work was raw, angry, beautiful. Serena saw herself in every brushstroke. You have a gift, she told the girl. Do not let anyone make you small. The girl cried. Serena held her and remembered what it felt like to have someone believe in you. On her 30th birthday, Serena woke before dawn and walked to the beach alone. The sand was cold beneath her bare feet. The sky was just beginning to lighten, pink and gold spreading across the horizon like watercolors bleeding into wet paper. She stood at the edge of the water, letting the waves wash over her ankles, and thought about everything that had brought her here. The betrayal, the exile, the slow, painful process of rebuilding herself from nothing. The man who had seen her when she was invisible, the love that had grown in the space she had made for it. The family she had lost, the family she had chosen. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket, a letter she had written the night before, addressed to her younger self, the woman who had walked out of that ballroom barefoot and broken, certain she would never feel whole again. She read it aloud to the ocean. You were never too soft. You were never too trusting. You were never a fool for believing in love. They were fools for thinking they could break you and still decide who you would become. Look at you now. Look at how you lived. She folded the letter carefully, placed it inside a glass bottle she had found at an antique shop in town, and sealed it with wax. Then she walked into the water until it reached her waist, pulled back her arm, and threw the bottle as far as she could. It caught the light as it arced through the air, flashing gold and silver, and then it hit the water with a soft splash and began to drift toward the horizon. Serena watched it go. Behind her, she heard footsteps on the sand. Adrian walked up beside her, wading into the water without hesitation, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Happy birthday, he murmured against her hair. She leaned back into him, feeling his warmth against the cold of the ocean. Thank you. What was in the bottle? A goodbye, she said, to the woman I used to be. He kissed her temple. And what now? She turned in his arms to face him, the man who had chosen her, the man who had waited, the man who had proven that not everyone leaves. Now, she said, we go home. He smiled. They walked out of the water together, hand in hand, as the sun broke fully over the horizon and painted the world in shades of gold. Behind them, the bottle drifted further and further out to sea, carrying with it all the pain she no longer needed. Ahead of them, the cottage waited, the gallery, the life they had built together from the wreckage of her old one. Serena Voss walked toward it without looking back. She had lost everything once, but she had built something better from the ashes. A life not just beautiful, but hers. And in that final, quiet truth, she found everything she never thought she deserved. This is Untold Desires. by Mr. Lewis. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. Sometimes it is simply becoming the person you were always meant to be. Until next time. Stories that stay with you.